Emma and James had made up their minds to spend the long May weekend at their cozy getaway in the Vermont countryside. It was that time of year when everything was coming back to life. Trees budding, the smell of fresh flowers in the air, and the sun finally breaking through after months of cold. On their way out of Boston, they hit up the local supermarket, loading up on all the essentials. Fresh veggies, some steaks for the grill, a couple of bottles of wine, and snacks for the weekend. But neither of them had the slightest clue that this trip would mark the beginning of the end for everything they thought they knew. Emma, a biology teacher at the local high school, rarely got time off. She was always busy prepping lessons, grading papers, or working with her students. The last time she had managed to sneak away to their country house had been 3 months ago. The thought of finally unwinding and being surrounded by nature filled her with anticipation. This was supposed to be their little escape, a place to leave the stress of the city behind and just enjoy some quiet time together. As soon as they pulled up to the house, James, like clockwork, took the lead, hauling the grocery bags inside while Emma started unpacking them on the kitchen counters. But almost immediately, something felt off. She stopped in her tracks for a moment, glancing around like she was trying to figure out what was wrong. At first glance, everything looked perfect, yet there was something unsettling about it all. It had been a long 3 months since she'd last set foot in this place, but the kitchen, it looked like someone had just cooked in here yesterday. The shelves were spotless, not a single speck of dust anywhere, which was completely out of character for their country house. The floor gleamed like it had just been mopped. Emma frowned. Usually, she spent the first day cleaning up the inevitable dust and grime that collected after months of being empty. But today, the place was eerily spotless, almost too perfect. A weird feeling crept up on Emma. The room smelled strange. There was this faint, almost imperceptible scent in the air that she couldn't quite put her finger on at first. Maybe it was just the fresh breeze blowing in from outside or something new in the house. But then it hit her. It was perfume. A light, floral fragrance that definitely didn't belong in this house. She froze for a second, taking a deep breath as a flood of questions rushed into her mind. She scanned the kitchen again, like she was searching for answers. Why was everything so clean? Who had been here? And that smell, that scent was all too familiar. She knew she wasn't imagining it. There was no way she could mistake the scent of a woman's perfume. Her stomach flipped. She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was nothing, just her imagination playing tricks on her. But the longer she stood there in the pristine kitchen, the more certain she became that something wasn't right. Emma continued putting the groceries away, but her mind was already far from the simple task at hand. Something had changed, and deep down, she could feel it. Emma had always been the kind of person who could pick up on the tiniest details, the kind of stuff that most people wouldn't even notice. She'd been like that ever since she was a kid, super observant, with a memory that didn't miss a beat. So, when they walked back into their Vermont house, something felt off to her right away. The first thing that caught her eye was the towel hanging in the bathroom. Now, that might not seem like a big deal to most people, but for Emma, it was weird. She always made sure to wash all the towels before heading back to the city, folding them neatly into the dresser. But now, there it was, hanging like someone had just used it. Her mind started racing, picking up on other little things that didn't sit right, like the ceramic jars where she kept the pasta and grains. Emma had this quirky habit of lining them up alphabetically. It was her way of keeping things in order. But when she opened the kitchen cupboard, she instantly noticed the jars weren't in the right places. "What the hell?" she muttered under her breath. She knew for a fact she'd left them perfectly arranged the last time they were here. That tiny shift in order sent a small jolt of anxiety running through her. And then there was the orchid. A fake one, sure, but she loved how it added a touch of warmth to the living room. It always sat on the table, never anywhere else. Except now, it was on the windowsill. Emma never put stuff on the windowsill. She thought it looked tacky. Slowly, she walked over to it, staring at the orchid like it might give her some sort of explanation. But, of course, it didn't. All it did was stir up more confusion in her gut. Who had moved it? And why? Her thoughts darted back to the kitchen. She reached for the cupboard where they kept the coffee. When she pulled out the jar, her heart sank. Last time they'd been here, the jar was practically full. Now, it was nearly empty. Emma's mind raced. She knew she hadn't touched the coffee since they got back. Something was definitely off. And then, there was the chocolate. A half-eaten bar of fancy dark chocolate with hazelnuts sat on the end table in the living room. Emma hated dark chocolate. That was James's thing. But he always made sure to finish it off or take it with him when they left. How could this be left behind? Or was it even his? When Emma finally couldn't take it anymore, she turned to James, laying out all the weird stuff that had been bothering her. He just laughed, shaking his head like she was overreacting. Babe, it's just chocolate. I must have forgotten it last time. No big deal, he said, voice calm, smile easy. But even his casual tone and reassuring grin couldn't chase away the cloud of doubt hanging over her. Something was off, and Emma's gut was telling her loud and clear that this wasn't just her imagination. Over the next few days, it wasn't just one or two things that stood out to Emma. No, the little off-kilter details kept piling up, one by one, like someone was playing a messed-up game with her mind. Each misplaced jar, every towel hung wrong, was like a sign, trying to tell her something was seriously wrong. It was as if these tiny, almost invisible clues were adding up to a bigger picture, one that made her feel completely off balance. And it was starting to drive her crazy. She couldn't shake it. No matter how hard she tried, these little things gnawed at her, making her stomach twist in knots. Every time she walked into a room, she felt like she was stepping into a puzzle she couldn't solve. Like there was someone, something, lurking just out of sight, messing with her sense of order. She couldn't just let it go. Finally, one night, she couldn't take it anymore. They were sitting at the kitchen table, the kind of quiet that usually felt cozy now pressing down on her, making the air feel too thick to breathe. She crossed her arms tight across her chest and exhaled deeply before finally speaking. "We need to change the locks on the door," she said, her voice tight with worry she couldn't hide. "James, I'm telling you, someone's been in our house." The words just hung there between them, heavy and thick like storm clouds about to burst. She tapped her fingers anxiously on the table, eyes staring at the wood grain as if the answer might just rise out of it. "Emma," James started to say, but she wasn't having it. "Listen to me." She cut him off, her voice sharper now, more insistent. "We should have put in cameras, but no. You said it was a waste of money, that we didn't need them because, what? This is a nice neighborhood, full of good people? Well, someone was in our house, James, while we were gone. And that freaks me the hell out." Her voice was rising, the frustration bubbling over, spilling out before she could even catch it. She wasn't just worried anymore. She was downright scared, and his reaction wasn't helping. James, though, just looked at her like she'd told him a ghost story. His lips pulled up into that half-smile, like he was amused. "Don't be so dramatic," he said, waving her concern away like it was smoke. "You're always imagining things. No one's been here, babe. Nothing's missing, right?" His calm tone only made her pulse race faster. How could he be so dismissive? Didn't he see what she was seeing? "Why don't you believe me?" she said, her voice cracking under the weight of her frustration. "Women can sense these things, James. I know someone's been here. It's like, I can smell a stranger. What if it was a homeless guy or something?" James let out a short laugh, like she'd said something cute, not serious. "Or maybe the house just wanted to mess with you a little, huh?" he joked, leaning over to plant a soft kiss on her forehead, like that was supposed to calm her down. "Come on, babe. We came up here to chill out, remember? This isn't the time to be playing detective." He squeezed her hand, looking at her like she was the one who needed to relax. His easy smile was meant to reassure, but it didn't. It only made her feel more alone with her thoughts, more on edge. How could he be so laid back about this? "Look," he added, his tone soft and coaxing, "you can overanalyze stuff all day at school, but here, you're just my wife." But Emma's gut wouldn't let it go. Even with James sitting right there, giving her that familiar, comforting smile, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. This house, their safe little getaway, felt invaded. And no matter how much James tried to soothe her, that nagging sense of dread wouldn't leave her. Something had changed, and she couldn't rest until she figured out what. James finally had to give in. At first, he resisted, brushing off Emma's concerns. But her relentless persistence wore him down. She wasn't letting it go, not after everything she'd been through. She was constantly bringing it up, questioning the safety of their home, insisting that something was off. So, even though James thought it was all in her head, he eventually swapped out the locks, figuring it might bring her some peace of mind, and maybe some peace for himself too. A few weeks went by, and summer hit hard. The city was suffocating, and Emma couldn't take it anymore. She needed a break from the noise, the hustle, the endless buzz of Boston streets. She was burned out, tired of the chaos, the meetings, and just the constant pressure of living in a big city. What she craved now was solitude, some time away from it all. She longed for quiet, for stillness. So, she packed her bags and headed to their country house. James, as usual, was caught up with work. He couldn't join her right away, though he promised to come up for the weekend. But Emma wasn't willing to wait any longer. She needed to escape, now dash, not tomorrow, not next week. The second she got there, she already felt lighter. She pulled up to the house, parked her car in the usual spot, and stepped out, breathing in the fresh country air. Instantly, she felt her heartbeat slow, the tension in her chest loosening with each step toward the house. This was where she found comfort, where everything seemed to fall back into place. Turning the key in the new lock, she pushed open the door and paused, bracing herself for something. Anything, out of the ordinary. But as she looked around, everything was as it should be. Towels folded neatly in the drawer, a light layer of dust covering the furniture, the orchid still sitting on the table right where she left it. No weird signs, no misplaced items, just normal. Emma let out a deep breath. For the first time in a while, she felt at ease. There were no strange shifts in her carefully organized world. She walked slowly through the house, checking corners, double-checking where things had felt wrong before. But this time, everything was right dash. Nothing was out of place, and that alone gave her the peace she'd been craving. Maybe now, she thought, she could really relax. A little later, after settling in, she decided to tackle the house. The place had gathered dust, and it was in desperate need of a good cleaning. Emma grabbed the vacuum and some cleaning supplies and got to work. She dusted the kitchen, scrubbed down the windows, and then moved into the living room. Everything was going smoothly until she pushed the couch aside, ready to vacuum the floor underneath. That's when she froze. There, glinting in the sunlight filtering through the window, was a gold ring. A diamond ring, to be exact. Emma crouched down and picked it up, turning it in her hand. It was unmistakable. This ring belonged to her friend Olivia. The very same ring Olivia's husband, Michael, had given her for her 30th birthday. Emma remembered it vividly, how Olivia had shown it off with pride, the sparkle in her eyes. So what the hell was it doing here, under her couch in their country house? Emma's heart raced as she stared at the ring, her mind scrambling to piece together how it could have ended up here. Was this another coincidence? Or was it the start of something much, much bigger? The questions swirled in her head, and yet, not a single answer surfaced. Emma had been wrestling with this gnawing feeling for what felt like ages. The nagging thoughts, those fleeting suspicions. She'd always brushed them off, convinced herself she was just being paranoid. But when she found that diamond ring under the couch, everything came crashing down in one overwhelming moment. Her mind went blank for a second, her heart skipping a beat as she stared at Olivia's ring. It was too familiar, too obvious. There was no way it could have ended up here by accident. No, someone had brought it. At first, Emma tried to rationalize it, clinging to any shred of logic she could muster. Maybe Olivia had dropped it the last time she was here? But when was that? She hadn't been to the house in months, and after changing the locks, no one but her and James had been inside. Her thoughts raced, trying to make sense of the impossible, but no explanation felt right. And then, like a ton of bricks, it hit her. Olivia, her best friend, the same Olivia who had an obsession with cleanliness, always keeping everything pristine. And James, her husband, who shared that exact same love for bitter coffee with dark chocolate. Just like Olivia, piece by piece, it all began to fall into place, and the truth slammed into her, leaving her breathless. Her stomach churned as the realization washed over her. James and Olivia had been coming to the house together, behind her back, in her own space, her sanctuary, the very place where she had always felt safe, away from the madness of the city. Now, it was tainted by betrayal. Emma sucked in a shaky breath, but it felt like the air was thick, heavy. Her chest tightened, and her thoughts spun wildly out of control. Was James cheating on her? With Olivia? Her best friend? She couldn't wrap her head around it, but the pieces were falling into place. The ring, their shared habits, all the small details she'd overlooked. It all made sense now, and it sickened her. And what about Michael? Michael adored Olivia, practically worshipped the ground she walked on. He'd do anything for her, always showering her with affection. There was a 15-year age gap between them, but Emma had always seen them as the perfect couple. Michael loved Olivia fiercely. It was obvious to everyone. And now this? How could James do this to her? To the woman who trusted him with her whole heart. Emma felt like she was drowning in her own thoughts. Tears blurred her vision as she tried to hold it together. But the pain was too much, too raw. Olivia, the person Emma thought of as a sister, someone she trusted with her deepest secrets, her closest confidant. They shared everything, the good, the bad, the messy in between. And now this? Betrayal. Emma's chest tightened. Her heart ached in a way she didn't know was possible. Her entire world, the life she'd built with James, was crumbling right in front of her. The tears wouldn't stop. Emma felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, and everything she thought she knew was falling apart. Everything she believed in, everything she trusted, it was all a lie. She couldn't hold back the tidal wave of emotion that was swallowing her whole, threatening to pull her under. After crying all night, feeling completely shattered and drained, Emma started to pull herself together. Her chest still ached, and her thoughts were spinning like a broken record. But at some point, she made a decision. No more tears. She wasn't going to let them mock her like this anymore. The betrayal from James and Olivia had cut deep, but now it was no longer just pain. It was fury. The hurt she once felt sharpened into something more focused, more determined. She was going to get even, get back at them for wrecking her life. No more of this victim stuff. No, she was going to take control. And right there, in that moment of realization, where her old life seemed to crumble, she began to plot her next move. First things first, she couldn't let on that she knew. Emma made a choice to act like everything was fine. She had to keep her mask of calm in place, even if she was screaming inside. Step 1. Set up the surveillance camera. Sure, she didn't need it to prove her suspicions, but she needed something more. She had to see it herself, see them together, to confirm what her gut was already telling her. The camera went up in secret, no one the wiser, not even James. Now all she had to do was wait, and she was prepared for the long haul. Once the camera was up, the real game began. Every day was a test of her endurance. She had to act like nothing was wrong, like she was still the same loving, trusting wife who believed in her husband. Every time James touched her, hugged her, or gave her a casual kiss on the forehead before heading out, it made her sick. Her heart felt like it was shattering over and over, but she kept her face neutral. Each touch felt like it woke up the screaming inside her soul, the scream she was trying so hard to keep quiet. If only he could hear that scream, she thought. Then he'd know just how much he's broken me with his betrayal. But James carried on, oblivious, like nothing had changed. And that hurt even more. But Emma was determined not to crack. Even when the pain felt like it was going to drown her, she held firm. All for the sake of seeing this through. With Olivia, it was even worse. Every time Emma heard her voice or saw her face, she wanted to recoil. The betrayal of her best friend, the one she had trusted like a sister, stung the most. How could she? Emma thought, over and over. Olivia, the person who knew her better than anyone, the one who had shared all her secrets. Now, every time they met, it felt like daggers. Emma started avoiding her. Talking to Olivia felt unbearable. She came up with excuse after excuse to get out of their usual dinners, the casual hangouts, the walks they used to love. Even just seeing Olivia's face made her stomach churn. But Olivia, clueless as ever, kept texting, kept calling. She acted like nothing was wrong, like they were still the same best friends. And that hypocrisy, the way Olivia went on pretending to be the loyal friend, only made Emma's rage burn hotter. How dare she talk to me, look me in the eye, like nothing's happened? Every day was a struggle. Emma played her part perfectly, like an actress in some twisted play where her life was on the line. Inside, she was breaking apart, but she knew. Soon, she would know the truth. She would see it with her own eyes. And that was the only thing keeping her together. She wasn't just waiting. She was planning. After a grueling month and a half, Emma finally got what she'd been working for. The camera footage. Watching what she already knew in her gut hit like poison. But now she had the hard evidence. Undeniable, raw, humiliating proof. There they were, James and Olivia, going at it right in the kitchen. Seeing it on video made everything even sharper, every little detail fueling her rage and agony. But instead of breaking her, it steeled her resolve. Now, she had power. The power to destroy everything those two had built on their lies. Emma saved the recording, knowing her moment of victory was coming. She had carefully chosen the perfect time to unveil it. It was going to happen on Olivia's birthday, the day she probably thought would be flawless. Little did she know, it would be the day she'd remember for all the wrong reasons. Michael, Olivia's unsuspecting husband, was about to get a front-row seat to the truth. Emma planned it perfectly. One blow, one moment, and their whole fake world would crumble. The party was set. Michael and Olivia had invited close friends and family to celebrate her 35th birthday. They had chosen a cozy lakeside restaurant for the occasion. the kind of place for romance and happy memories, not for what Emma had in store. She swore to herself that Olivia would never forget this birthday. Emma prepared herself meticulously for the evening. She wasn't going to walk in looking weak or beaten. No, she needed to show them all, especially James and Olivia, that she was strong, in control, and absolutely unbreakable. First, she made sure she looked the part. She did her makeup flawlessly, accentuating her natural beauty, and put on an expensive evening gown that was guaranteed to turn heads. She completed the look with a short, edgy haircut and slipped into high heels that made her walk with confidence and grace. But her appearance was just part of the plan. The real weapon was her speech, something she had rehearsed over and over. It wasn't just words. It was a perfectly aimed strike meant to rip through Olivia's facade and expose everything. Emma had visualized how every sentence would land like a blade, leaving no room for defense or escape. And now, the evening had finally arrived. As the guests mingled, laughed, and drank, Emma stayed composed, even as a storm raged inside her. The host, as planned, asked if anyone wanted to come up and say a few words to the birthday girl. Emma was the first to stand up, instantly capturing everyone's attention. She confidently walked up to the microphone, a cool smile on her face, and asked for the special video she prepared for Olivia to be played on the big screen. Everyone expected to see a sweet birthday tribute, a video full of memories and heartfelt moments. But Emma knew the expectations were about to come crashing down. The room, once filled with laughter and the hum of carefree conversations, suddenly fell silent as the lights dimmed and all eyes, including those of James and Olivia, turned towards the large screen. Everyone expected some heartfelt tribute, maybe a montage of childhood memories or romantic moments from Olivia's life with Michael. But what happened next was beyond anyone's wildest imagination. The moment the video started rolling and James and Olivia appeared on screen, passionately kissing, ripping each other's clothes off in a rush of lust, the entire room seemed to freeze in place. The air was thick with shock. A couple of women gasped, and the host, looking utterly confused, stood motionless, unsure of what to do next. He glanced back and forth between the screen and Olivia, whose face had turned ghostly pale. Michael, watching his wife in such a compromising situation, didn't comprehend it at first. His eyes widened in disbelief, then pain, and finally, rage. The emotions hit him one after the other like a tidal wave, crashing down until all that remained was fury. He sat there, stunned, unable to tear his gaze away from the screen as the scene unfolded in front of everyone. His jaw tightened, and when the video reached its climax, he snapped. Without thinking, he swung his arm and slapped Olivia hard across the face. The sound echoed through the room, sharp and loud, causing some of the guests to flinch. Then, with a fury that was impossible to contain, Michael yanked off his wedding ring and threw it on the ground with such force that it clanged loudly against the floor. The metal's ring reverberated through the stunned silence, and without another word, he stormed out of the restaurant. Emma watched it all with a detached calmness. Somewhere deep inside, she felt a flicker of sympathy for Michael. He was a good guy, a decent man who didn't deserve this kind of betrayal, but his life had been torn apart now, just like hers had been. Why did Olivia choose James? Emma wondered bitterly. There were so many other men, younger, hotter, available, and yet she had gone after him. James, the man Emma had shared her life with, the man she'd planned her future with. Those plans were now in ruins, just like the trust she once had. But despite everything, Emma couldn't help but feel a dark satisfaction. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. Her heart might still be shattered, but watching the chaos unfold was oddly satisfying. The camera footage had done its job. It had destroyed James and Olivia's lives completely. They looked like they wanted to disappear right then and there, to melt into the floor and escape the dozens of stunned, judging eyes fixed on them. Emma knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. There were still scars that hadn't healed, and her revenge was only just beginning. But for now, this moment was exactly what she'd been living for. When Emma got back home, her heart was pounding like she'd just run a marathon. Inside, a storm of emotions swirled. Anger, hurt, betrayal, all mixed together into one toxic cocktail. Her hands were shaking, but she wasn't about to cry anymore. The tears had run dry the moment the truth came crashing down. Now, a cold determination settled in, and she knew exactly what needed to be done. Silently, she walked into the bedroom, where every corner of the room once felt like it was soaked in their shared history. the blankets, the furniture. Everything used to represent their life together, but now it was all just a collection of meaningless memories. Emma yanked open the closet, pulling out all of James' things. His favorite blazer he wore to work, the old t-shirts he lounged around in on weekends, the sweatpants they used to take walks in. It was all just garbage now, nothing but reminders of lies and betrayal. With a fierce determination, she gathered all his clothes into a heap and dragged them to the window. Without a second thought, she started tossing them out, watching as his shirts fluttered down to the yard below. Pants caught in tree branches, socks scattered across the pavement like useless scraps. Her face remained calm, like someone who'd already decided to erase a part of their life. A few minutes later, James showed up at the door. He looked stunned, totally caught off guard by what was happening. His confusion was clear even from a distance. He had no idea what to do, but he knew this was the end. "Emma, wait, I can explain," he started, his voice full of desperation, stepping forward cautiously. But Emma shot him a cold, detached look. "Explain?" Her voice was calm, but it had an edge of steel. "There's nothing left to explain, James. It's over. You're done." Her determination was unshakable. She'd already erased him from her life like a crossed-out line on a to-do list. He tried to keep talking, but each time he opened his mouth, Emma just walked into another room, showing him exactly how much she didn't care anymore. Eventually, James was left with no choice but to gather his clothes from the yard, humiliated, while their neighbors probably watched the whole scene unfold from their windows. It was a perfect metaphor for his downfall. Once her husband, now just a guy picking up his scattered belongings. The next day, she filed for divorce. No discussions, no chances at reconciliation. Olivia didn't get off easy either. Michael, after learning about her betrayal, was just as decisive. He filed for divorce too, and without his support, Olivia lost everything. She was kicked out of the apartment that belonged to Michael's mom. Now, she was out on the streets, with no roof over her head, no family, no friends. The country house, the one James and Emma once dreamt of making their home, was sold. The money split between them, and with that, any remaining ties were severed. The irony was, James and Olivia's relationship didn't survive the aftermath. What started as a passionate affair quickly fell apart. They couldn't make it work after everything that had happened. The betrayal and lies had left scars too deep to heal. Emma, while she felt some satisfaction at their downfall, knew she'd never be able to trust other women again, especially friends. But life went on. Years later, Emma met someone new. He wasn't like James at all, kind, reliable, with a patience she hadn't known before. He took his time earning her love, understanding that her heart had been shattered, and it wouldn't be easy for her to trust again. Slowly, over time, she let herself love him, and that turned out to be the best decision of her life.